Hello, my beautiful mythical creatures. Ace here, he, she. And today, first off, I'm going to apologize. I'm sorry if I butcher any names. Today, we are going to be reading a new fanfiction called Kaijin. Written by Namidi. Like I said, I am sorry if I butcher any names. So I'm going to read the summary. When Izuku is diagnosed quirkless at the age of 6 years old, his mother sells him off. When stuck in a nightmare, Izuku gains a quirk and decides to take his chances on the streets. With the help of some feral cats and a couple unlikely friends, Izuku grows up in the margins of society. His dreams of becoming a hero pushed aside in favor of survival. Izuku becomes Kaijin, an urban cryptid said to be more animal than boy. I am so excited to read this to you. The main trigger warnings will be in the description. But there are trigger warnings on this chapter, and I'll read them to you now. So that's child abuse, manipulation, description of blood, and description of injuries. Give me a sec. My door opened. And I'm back. Chapter 1. Never a child. Izuku owes his life to Bakugo Mitsuki, not that the woman or the child knew it. Izuku's life would have ended before it even began if his mother's best friend hadn't announced she was pregnant just a week after Inko discovered her own pregnancy. I'm trying to get my stand off my mic, but it's really loud on your guys' end. Whatever, I'll just hold it. Discovered her own pregnancy, and mere days before her appointment at the clinic. She could have still made the appointment, terminated her pregnancy, and gone on about her life as she always had. But Inko was nothing if not competitive, especially when the jealousy towards her oldest friend reared its head. Mitsuki had it all: a big house, a successful career, a doting husband. Inko lived in an apartment, worked long hours, and her husband was a drunk. But maybe this is where she would get one up on Mitsuki. Her husband breathed fire. She had a minor telekinesis. Her husband breathed fire, and with her minor telekinesis, the odds of their child having pyrokinesis was high. A powerful quirk, perfect for a high-ranking hero. The Bakugo family only had chemical substance quirks. There was no way any child of theirs would have a quirk more powerful than Inko's child. Oh, Mitsuki, this is wonderful. I'm pregnant too. Really? Fuck yeah, Inko. Mitsuki cheered. We can raise our kids together. We'll be the best damn parents to ever live. How's Hizashi taking the news? Inko's smile froze, her voice becoming more chipper than was natural. He was so happy. He couldn't wait for our family to grow. I want nothing to do with it. And just like that, Hizashi was gone to America, leaving behind some loose clothes, the beer and sake bottles scattered across the apartment. No amount of pleading could get him to stay. To understand that the child would be powerful, would make them rich and pull them out of their mundane lives. Within hours of the door slamming shut, Inko was on the phone with Mitsuki, her voice gasping and her breath hitching. But no tears fell from her... Her breath hitching, but no tears fell as she recounted how she had discovered Hizashi's infertility and his escape to America. Mitsuki was enraged for her friend, offering to pay for 2 months' rent while she adjusted to a single income. Inko gleefully accepted. She waited until the next day to call into work and take the rest of the week off. She did her best to sound tired and depressed as she told the gossipy nurse in charge of the schedule that morning all her woes. It would be all over the office by the next week. Inko melted the sympathy showered on her as the poor pregnant woman abandoned by her deadbeat husband. Her coworkers took her shifts without fuss whenever she complained about sore feet and morning sickness. People often gave her homemade food and gifted her expensive baby supplies, which she sold and replaced with the cheapest options she could find. She enjoyed the attention, but her jealousy flared when she spent time with the Bakugos. Between how attentive Masaru was with his wife's needs, and Mitsuki buying 2 of everything so their kids can match, Inko's envy deepened and her resentment grew behind big smiles. At least Izuku was a cute baby. Soft squishy cheeks and big blue-green eyes. He laid in the bassinet beside his mother's bed as she read a magazine. The few times he had fussed, Inko had ignored him until it built into a scream. A nurse arrived to help the seemingly panicking new mother soothe him. About mid-morning, the Bakugos arrived with their 3-month-old in a carrier. Katsuki's eyes had darkened into a deep cinnamon, and his blonde hair was growing into an imitation of his mother's spiky style. He was a fussy baby that seemed determined to try everything, despite his inability to control his limbs. "How are you feeling, Inko?" Masaru asked. "All right. Doing it alone was hard, but I pulled through," she said tiredly, doing her best to imitate a suppressed yawn. I always yawn at that part. "You're a fucking champ, Inko," Masuki said, unbuckling Katsuki. "You can handle this shit without Hizashi. We'll do it together." With a little fussy whine, Izuku had woken up by his auntie's usual abrasive volume. Inko almost continued to ignore him, but Mitsuki's sparkling eyes locked with the bassinet, and she was settling her own baby in her arms, and Inko wouldn't be outdone. "Hush, Izuku," she cooed, reaching out and placing a hand on his little tummy. "It's just your Auntie Mitsuki." "Aw, he's precious!" Mitsuki exclaimed. "Look, Katsuki, this is your friend Izuku." She held her son over the side of the bassinet. They stared at each other for a moment before Katsuki blew a raspberry and reached out for the smaller boy. Izuku cooed happily and made weak, grabby hands toward the blonde. "They're going to be great friends," Masaru predicted. Unbeknownst to them, the Bakugos continued to save Izuku. While Inko was indifferent to her son when they were alone, only doing the bare minimum to keep the tiny baby alive. She doted on him when they were with the Bakugos. Mitsuki took her promise that she and her best friend would raise their kids together seriously, and never went longer than a few days to a week without seeing her nephew. Those few days would leave Izuku hungry and woozy until the night before the expected visit. He would get a bowl of rice and maybe some raw vegetables before bed. Whenever Auntie Mitsuki and Katsuki were around, Izuku got 3 proper meals and was allowed to play outside and with the toys that were usually locked away. When they were gone, he was basically invisible. His mother went about her life like she was the only occupant of the apartment. By the time Izuku was 3, he could make a simple meal and get himself cleaned and dressed for the day. He knew how to move silently and how to disappear even within the tiny confinements of the apartment's kitchen and living room, where he was most likely to run into his mother. Going unseen was Izuku's best option. It was impossible to know if his mother would ignore him or torment him. Izuku had an almost permanent bruise in the center of his back between his shoulder blades, easy to hide and effective as each blow knocked the air from the little boy's lungs. Of course, that wasn't the only place she hit him, but a few bruises and cuts here and there were explained away by a mother worried for her clumsy son. Izuku preferred the days she hit. He could take physical pain. Most of the time he felt numb to it as he lay breathless and protected his organs and head the best he could. The words hurt the worst. She blamed him for their poverty, his father leaving, for her loneliness that had her inviting a new man or two into the apartment every week. "You're worthless, useless. You should never been born. You owe me everything." She grabbed him by his forest green hair and dragged him into the closet. "Your only worth is your quirk. Until you have that, you're just a burden." The door slammed shut. Izuku's favorite place was preschool. No mom, a guaranteed meal, and Kachan. Masaru's prediction had been correct. Izuku and Katsuki were thick as thieves. They shared everything, went everywhere together, and promised they would be the _1 hero duo when they grew up. I can't wait until we get our quirks. I bet they're awesome, Katsuki exclaimed. Mom says I'll have pyronesis. What's that? Controlling fire. Cool. I wonder what mine will be. Probably something you sweat, like your mom and dad. Something, maybe a stronger version of your dad's acid. Yeah, that will be cool. You're so smart, Izuku. Izuku blushed. We'll have the best quirks and be the greatest duo ever. You bet your ass we will. Kachan! That's a bad word. In the spring between Katsuki and Izuku's 5th birthdays, the two boys were running around the park when Katsuki became very interested in his hands, shaking them like they were numb. What's wrong, Kai-chan? Izuku asked, walking back to his friend. My hands feel itchy. Did you touch a strange plant again? No, nerd. I didn't touch anything. Izuku grabbed the blonde's wrist and looked closely at his palms. They were a little red and smelt oddly of burnt sugar. Kachan hissed in discomfort and squeezed his hands together repeatedly, rubbing his fingers against the palms. It's getting worse. Izuku looked closer and noticed a shiny coating on Kachan's hands. The sweet smell grew stronger. I think your quirk is... There was a loud bang, an orange flash. Izuku screamed as the heat seared across his face. His vision went white. The ringing in Izuku's ear faded gradually. He began to make out the cries of his friend calling their moms. His head was laying in Kachan's lap, but the blonde was being very careful to keep his hands away as they continued to pop occasionally. His left cheek burned. He could feel his pulse throbbing underneath the hot skin, making him whimper. Katsuki! What happened? Auntie Mitsuki cried. I don't know, Kachan sobbed. My hands itched when Zuku tried to look the... Let's retry that. My hands itched when Zuku tried to look the exploded. Mitsuki kneeled beside the boys, carefully turning Izuku's face and looking at the blistering red skin. Explosions? That's very... Yeah. Explosions. That's a very powerful quirk. A quiet voice mused. Katsuki finally looked away from the horrible burn across his best friend's face. Auntie Inko was standing a few steps away. She didn't spare a look at Izuku. Intense gaze at Izuku. She didn't spare a look at Izuku, instead glazing at Katsuki. Several emotions flooded across her face as they made eye contact before settling on something that made Katsuki's skin crawl. Inko, he had 2nd-degree burns across his cheek, maybe even a 3rd degree in the middle. That doesn't sound right. Give me a sec. Inko, he has 2nd-degree burns across his cheek. Maybe even a 3rd degree in the middle. We have to take him to the hospital. Katsuki whined. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Several pops sounded as small explosions appeared in Katsuki's upturned palms. I know, baby. You couldn't have known this would happen, but you have to calm down. Your core keeps activating. Katsuki took a couple shaky breaths, but the pops kept happening. The more they happened, the more panicked he got. He began to cry. Water, cool down. A weak, shaky hand grabbed the front of Katsuki's shirt. Izuku looked up with glassy eyes. Explosive sweat. Stop sweating. Cool down. Katsuki leaned over his friend and gently squeezed the green net's head with his elbows. I'm sorry, Izuku. It's okay. Izuku slurred. He tried to smile, but hissed as the blisters pulled. Stay still, honey, Auntie Mitsuki said, rummaging in her bag. She pulled out her travel first aid kit and the sheet they used for their picnic. Tearing the sheet into strips, she soaked them in water. She wrapped the largest around her son's neck and the 2 smaller strips around his hands. I missed a word. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to start from the beginning. Sorry, guys. She wrapped the largest strip around her son's neck and the smaller 2 strips around his hands. The pops sizzled for a few seconds before stopping entirely. If you don't sweat, you can't make explosions, Mitsuki concluded as she opened her first aid kit and began soaking the gauze. Very smart, Izuku. Katsuki snorted. Nerd. Mitsuki spread the wet bandages across Izuku's face until the burn was covered. Oh, baby, are you okay? Auntie Inko cried, kneeling down and reaching out to her son. Katsuki felt Izuku flinch. Let's get him to the car. I don't think I can carry him, Mitsuki. My hands are shaking. No worries, I'll carry him. Katsuki allowed his mom to pick up his friend and quickly got to his feet to follow. A heavy hand landed on his shoulder. Very good, Katsuki, Auntie Inko cooed. That's a very powerful quirk. You'll make a great hero with a quirk like that. She looked down at him with a smile. Much too bright for a woman whose son was just in an explosion. Her eyes had the same look that made him shiver, like she was studying him, appraising him. He couldn't help but notice that her hands were perfectly steady. Katsuki was confused. Nothing made sense. Auntie Inko was the sweetest, kindest, gentlest woman alive. Everyone said so. So why did she make Katsuki feel uncomfortable? After his quirk manifested, she became very attached to him, made his favorite foods, took him wherever he wanted to go, and listened to him like everything he said was the most interesting thing she had ever heard. It was often her and not Izuku that would invite him over in the following year. Meanwhile, Izuku began to close in on himself. When he returned to school with a large burn scar on his cheek, a rumor spread that Katsuki had hit him. A few of the other boys began to pick on him, pushing him around and calling him names until Katsuki told them to back off. It worked, but only because the other kids thought Katsuki was beating Izuku up in secret. Izuku started coming to school with more bruises and cuts. Twice he was missing a nail. I slammed my finger in the door again, Kachan, he explained the second time. In these, Katsuki gestured to the purple bruises on the underside of Izuku's forearm. Ran into the counter. Izuku may have stopped inviting Katsuki over, but he would still ask to come to the Bakugos often. That was fine by Katsuki. He had the better game controllers in the bigger yard, but he couldn't get Izuku's little flinch out of his head, or how he stiffened when it was time to go home. When spring came, Katsuki's parents allowed him to practice his quirk outside. The explosions were small because of the cold, but Izuku insisted to help him learn control. The shorter boy fluttered around like a hummingbird, making suggestions and muttering analyzations under his breath. Hey, shitty nerd, stop muttering. I want to hear what you are saying about my quirk. Sorry, Kaijin. I was just wondering if you could fly. Rockets use explosions to fly, so why can't you? Katsuki gaped at him. I'm going to try it, he yelled, thrusting his hands downwards and jumping, letting off the biggest explosion he could. He fell on his face. Izuku fell on his butt and rolled with laughter. Shut up! Katsuki roared. You need a bigger explosion than that. You need a bigger explosion to get lift off, Izuku explained breathlessly. Between the cold keeping you from sweating and how new your quirk is, there's no way you could fly yet. Katsuki flexed his fingers. But when I'm older, I could fly? Sure, I don't see why not. There's a lot of cool things quirks can do. I want to be able to figure out what those things are. When are you getting your quirk, nerd? Izuku seemed to deflate. He twisted his fingers painfully. I have an appointment with the quirk specialist tomorrow. Katsuki frowned. Izuku should have been bouncing on the balls of his feet at the thought of discussing quirks, especially his own. But he was shaking, and his eyes darted around, often landing on the house, where they could see their parents through the window. White steam flew from his mouth and nose faster than was normal. Izuku? Hey, what's wrong? He held his friend's shoulders until Forest Scream met Cinnamon. What if I don't get a strong quirk, Kachan? You'll get a strong quirk, nerd. You have to, or we can't become the #1 hero duo. A week later, he would regret those words. Katsuki waited by the phone all day Saturday for Izuku to call him with news of his quirk. But as the sun set, Katsuki's lungs began to fill. But as the sun set, Katsuki's lungs began to feel like they were being squeezed. Something was wrong. Auntie Inko called the next day, apologizing for not calling earlier. Izuku was just so upset. I don't think he'll be going to school for a few days. What happened, Inko? The doctor said Izuku is quirkless. He has the extra toe joint. That means he can't develop a quirk. Katsuki's eyes widened. The possibility of Izuku not having a quirk at all never crossed their minds. How are they going to be pro heroes together now? Oh, the poor boy. He was so excited to have pyrokinesis. Just give him time. I'm sure he'll find a way to bounce back. He's a smart boy after all. There's a lot of cool things quirks can do. I want to be able to figure out what those things are. Yeah, Zuku's super smart, Katsuki insisted. He's so smart. He'll probably... he's so smart, he probably doesn't even need a quirk. We'll be a hero duo like All Might and Sir Night-Eye. Brains and bronze. Mitsuki patted her son's head with a smile. Sorry, Katsuki, but Izuku will never be a hero. The mother and son froze. Katsuki was pretty sure his mom's face... Katsuki was pretty sure his mom hurt her face with how fast her smile turned into a frown. A quirkless person can't be a hero. He'll just get himself or someone else killed. You have a wonderful quirk, Katsuki. You'll be a great hero without Izuku. It's better this way. Inko, Mitsuki started. I'm sorry, Mitsuki, but I have to make lunch. Izuku didn't eat his breakfast. The dial tone filled the living room. Mom? Katsuki's voice sounded wet. His mom knelt in front of him and gently held his face. I can still be a hero with Izuku, right? Mitsuki sighed and hugged her son. Of course you can, Firecracker. When everything has sank in and Izuku comes back to school, you'll tell him that he can be a hero, that you'll be the best hero duo since All Might and Night-Eye. I'll talk to Inko. She's just afraid. Quirkless people are not treated nicely. Katsuki knew that. Izuku had raged about how horrible society treated mutant, villainous, and weak quirks. Quirkless people were treated the worst, like they weren't even human. I'll protect him until he's strong enough. Izuku didn't come to school on Monday or Tuesday. When Wednesday rolled around and Izuku's desk remained empty, Katsuki begged his mom to call. It went to voicemail. I'll stop by tomorrow on my way to work, I promise. On Thursday, Katsuki could physically feel that Izuku wasn't present even before he entered the classroom. Like a hole deep in his quirk. Like a hole deep in his core, where his soul should be. He tried telling himself that he would have answers when he got home, that his mom would go see Auntie Inko and Izuku and convince them that nothing had changed, that Izuku could come back. When he walked into his house after school, his mom was on the phone. Katsuki's home. Can he talk to Izuku? He's been so worried about him. I understand. I'm sure he's tired. Getting introduced to a new school is stressful. Tell him we miss him. I'll call again tomorrow. She hung up. A new school? Katsuki asked. His mom looked at him sadly. Yes, honey. The preschool you go to doesn't allow quirkless students. If I had known that, I would have never enrolled you there. Katsuki growled. I'm not going back there. I'm moving schools too, right? Baby, you have to finish this week. I'll ask Inko where she's sending Izuku and get you transferred as fast as I can. Katsuki nodded and went to get a snack. He would see Izuku next week. Something felt wrong, like a disaster was just around the corner. But Katsuki couldn't look away. His eyes found Izuku's empty desk, the void where he usually sat during morning circle. The movement of the pen when the teacher reached Izuku's name during roll call, and rather than putting an X, she crossed out the whole line. Katsuki felt blind terror creep up on him. Something was wrong. He asked the teacher if he could go to the nurse and sprinted to the front office to use the phone. His mom must have recognized the number because she picked up on the first ring. Hello? Mom? Katsuki gasped, barely getting the words out while trying to contain his tears. Something is wrong with Izuku. I can feel it. We need to go there now. Calm down, Firecracker. You're having a panic attack. Just breathe. In slowly. 1, 2, 3. Out slowly. 1, 2, 3. Katsuki followed his mother's directions. The shaking soon stopped. Now, do you feel like something is wrong? Katsuki thought about it. He remembered Izuku's empty locker and his slippers still under the bench. Yes, something is really, really wrong. I have to see Izuku. His mom thought for a moment. Okay, I'll pick you up and we'll go to Inko's. I'll call her on the way. Stay in the office and keep doing your breathing. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Katsuki could hear her keys jingling and the wind chimes they had hung at the front door over the phone. Okay. He hung up. It sounded like a gunshot. Mitsuki came into the office like a whirlwind, much more frantic than Katsuki had ever seen her. She scribbled her signature on the sign-out sheet and quickly ushered Katsuki into the car. Mom? Katsuki asked as she zipped out of the parking lot. She startled like he had yelled. Sorry, honey. I tried to call Inko 3 times on the way here, but she didn't answer. She's always home on Fridays. Mitsuki didn't like keeping things from Katsuki. The kid spent too much time with the scarily observant Izuku. He would know something was bothering her, and she didn't want to trigger another panic attack. The trip to Inko and Izuku's apartment felt like an eternity. Every stoplight was red for eons. When they finally arrived, the car was barely in park when Katsuki scrambled out, his mom yelling at him to slow down, but she was right behind him in seconds. He ran up the stairs, tripping halfway up, and continued on all fours. Tripping halfway up and continuing on all fours, hoping it would give him an extra boost. When he reached the door, it felt so foreboding that he didn't dare to knock. When he reached the door, it felt so foreboding that he didn't dare knock. His mother had no such fear and pounded on the door as soon as she arrived. They heard shuffling inside, and the door was wrenched open by a weeping Inko, a damp handkerchief twisted in her hands. "Mitsuki!" she exclaimed and fell into her friend's arms. "Inko, what's wrong? What happened?" Inko gasped like she was being drowned. Inko gasped like she's been drowning. "He's gone. Izuku ran away last night. I only just noticed when he didn't come out for breakfast." "Izuku? Izuku's gone? Have you called the police?" Inko nodded. "They're on their way." Wrapping her arm around the shorter woman, Mitsuki guided her into the living room. Belatedly, Katsuki darted inside and shut the door. His mom was sitting on the couch rubbing Inko's back, but Katsuki didn't feel like being still. His best friend was missing. "That idiot!" Katsuki muttered as he was pacing the hall. "We promised. Never do anything alone." He felt another panic attack coming on and detoured into the bathroom on his next pass. Sometimes splashing water in his face grounded him. As he opened the door, he was hit with the strong smell of bleach and other chemicals. He pulled back the shower curtain and found cleaning supplies laying hazardly in the tub. The bucket was on its side along with a scrub brush. Several bottles of chemicals were present. Bleach was still making its way down the drain from an open bottle. Something's not right. There we go. Bleach was still making its way down the drain from an open bottle that had fallen over. Weird. Panic forgotten, Katsuki closed the curtain and stepped back into the hallway. He came face to face with the play. What are those signs called? Plaque. That's how you say the word. He came face to face with the plaque mounted on the door across the hall. Izuku's room. The door was slightly ajar. Katsuki pushed it open and stepped into his best friend's room. The smell of chemicals was here too. Izuku's room was a hero shrine. Most of the decorations was All Might, but there were still several other heroes represented. President Mike, Midnight, Fat Gum, Roku, the Wild Pussycats, Gang Orca. There were even some custom merch from an underground hero that Izuku had been researching. As Katsuki looked around the room, he tried to pick out merch he or his parents had given Izuku. A lunchbox, a top 10 heroes poster from last year, the rare Silver Age All Might action figure. Wait, Katsuki looked around again. The action figure was missing. He could see the spot on the shelf where it had been sitting still in its box. Did he take it with him? No, he wouldn't have. He was protective of it. He wouldn't even move it from the spot. He hadn't even moved it from its spot since he got it a year ago. Katsuki did another circlet, this time looking for missing merch. A suspicious space between the posters showed where Izuku displayed a hero pins, where Izuku display of hero pins was missing. So was the framed photo of the two of them meeting President Mike. And several other small figures were nowhere to be found. It didn't make any sense. Stepping out into the hallway, he started pacing again. He was agitated. His mind kept trying to fit the pieces together. He was just thinking he needed more clues when he saw it. A streak of some red-brown substance was barely visible on the edge of the closet door. Katsuki's fingertips felt cold as he reached for the handle. Ice was melting in his lungs, making his whole body shiver. The floor was covered in the same substance as the door, but this was more red than brown. There were streaks in the wall, and the back of the door was scarred by deep gouges. Something was caught between the splinter of the door. Something was caught behind a splinter in the door. Katsuki picked it out and immediately dropped it with a gasp. 3 weeks ago, Izuku had gotten some Midnight's non-toxic nail polish. Katsuki would recognize this sparkly blue black anywhere. Pressing a hand to his mouth, Katsuki dry heaved. He vaguely heard a knock at the door, and Inko squeaked as she dashed to open it. "Hello, I'm Detective Sakauchi. We received a call about a missing person." "Yes, my son has ran away. Please find my baby." Suddenly, Katsuki wasn't cold anymore. He was filled with fire. It felt like his hands when he used his quirk, but through his whole body, a bomb screaming to go off. What had she done? Namasa was tired. He was just getting off the night shift when the call had came in from a frantic mother, begging for help to find her son. He had been missing less than 8 hours, and usually they couldn't open a missing for 24. But she had said her son was 6 and quirkless. Namasa knew the statistics. If the kid wasn't dead already, he would be soon. A woman with wild blonde hair was hovering behind the mother, arms stretched out like she feared the green net would collapse. Excuse me. "We'll do everything we can. These officers will take your statement. Do you object? Do you object to being recorded?" No. Please ask whatever you need. Find my boy." Namasa nodded to his colleagues. Normally, Detective Sakauchi would conduct the interview himself. His quirk was perfect for it. But in cases like this abuse at home, was always an option. He would have to disclose his lie detector quirk if he talked to her directly. The recording would work fine. While the officers took the mother's statement, Namasa looked around. The apartment seemed cozy. Plump pillows and a soft blanket on the couch. A quantity knickknacks on the shelves, but something felt off. There were no kids' toys. Several breakable decorations were sitting too close to the table edges. There were no photos of a child. If he didn't know any better, he would never have guessed a 6-year-old lived there. Moving to the kitchen, it was spotless. He opened the fridge quietly and couldn't find any kids' snacks, like juice boxes or yogurt cups. He opened a few cupboards and found one low down, full of mismatched plastic dishes and cutlery. Everything you would need to make a basic meal. Namasa turned around and nearly jumped out of his skin. A little boy had just appeared from the hallway. He looked remarkably like the blonde woman, so he assumed it was her kid. He was still as a statue and pale enough to actually be stone, but his red eyes burned with rage. Namasa followed his gaze and found them locked on Midoriya Inko. "Hey kid, you okay?" The kid stayed silent, but his hands balled into fists. Small pops sounded and smoke curled from between his fingers. "Kid? Katsuki?" The blonde had swept over and knelt in front of her son, but he didn't seem to notice. All eyes had turned to the source of the popping sound. "What did you do?" It was barely a whisper, but in the silence that had fallen, it might as well have been shouted. "What did you do to him?" This time it was a demand, his gaze unwavering. What do you mean, Katsuki?" Midoriya-san asked, her voice shaking. "What did you do?" The kid screamed now, stepping forward and releasing small explosions from each hand. Namasa was thankful this was a child, or those explosions would have been like grenades. "You hurt him! How dare you! What did you do? Where's Izuku?" The child, Katsuki, tried to rush forward, but was caught by his mother. "She hurt him! She did something to him!" "Katsuki, what are you talking about, honey?" His mother held him gently by the wrists, directing his explosions away from causing any harm. The hall closet! Check the hall closet! Namasa slipped past the kid and marched down the hall to the still open door, but faltered as he got closer. He recognized blood when he saw it. The lower half of the door was painted in it. Clawed ridges mirrored the wood, and the detective's stomach flipped. He looked inside and saw the dry pool of blood and a human fingernail. He heard desperate sobbing as he marched back into the living room. The blonde woman had scooped up her kid and held him to her chest. She retreated behind the counter that divided the kitchen and the living room. using it as a shield and keeping her wide eyes on her friend. "Arrest her, now!" the detective barked, and his colleagues quickly complied. "What?" Midoriya-san gasped as quirk suppressant's cuffs clicked into place. "What are you doing? You need to find my son. He's out there and helpless. I've done nothing wrong." A small twing in Namasa's head told him this was a lie. "Midoriya Inko, I am duty bound to inform you that my quirk is called a lie detector. I will know if what you say is a lie or the truth. You are being questioned on suspicion of child abuse at minor. You are being arrested on suspicion of child abuse at minimum and murder at worst." There was silent for a moment. No one seemed to breathe. Then Midoriya Inko scoffed and squared her shoulders. It was like a mask coming off. Suddenly, the veneer of a worried mother peeled away, leaving something cold and cruel. "You'll never find him." A quickly sniffled sob sounded from the kitchen. "Inko, why?" the blonde woman asked. "He ruined my life. He had one purpose, to manifest a powerful quirk and become a hero. To overtake Katsuki and pay back everything he owes me. I would have one victory over the perfect Bakugo Mitsuki, but the brat was quirkless. He was useless to me. So I got rid of him." All true, or what she believes to be true. "But you loved Izuku. You always doted on him." "I couldn't stand the brat. Putting on the devoted mother act while in public made me sick." "She's been hurting him his whole life, Mom." A small voice spoke up. "Those bruises and cuts she always claimed were his clumsiness got worse after I got my quirk. I asked him once, but he made excuses." Inko huffed angrily. "You weren't supposed to have a powerful quirk. Your parents have weak chemical quirks. When you manifested explosion, I had to make sure Izuku would manifest something better. And until then, I would spoil you as a backup plan." "You bitch! That's why you suddenly babysat more. You were trying to groom my child." Inko grinned evilly. This woman was a worse psychopath than most villains he dealt with. "Did you hurt your son? Answer verbally." "Yes." "True." "Did you kill your son?" Katsuki whined and his mother shushed him quietly. "No." "True." Namasa allowed himself to breathe a little easier. "When did you last see your son?" "Last night." "True." "Not good. He's been gone for longer than 12 hours. "Where is your son?" "I don't know." "True." "Where did you last see your son?" On the corner across the street." "True." This was strange. The woman wanted him gone for good. Why did she kick him out in an area he knew well, where he could ask someone he knew for help? A quirkless kid and a narcissistic mother that only cared about something if it had value. Sorry. Namasa did not like where his mind had gone. Did you sell your son? The question took everyone by surprise. Inko's eyes went wide, and she shut her mouth with an audible click. Did you sell your son to the Shihaikaizai? I'm not saying anything else. True. Midoriya Inko, you are under arrest for child abuse, child abandonment, suspectance of human trafficking, and suspectance of human trafficking. Take her to the precinct and call in the task force. Inko was led away. As Inko was led away, Namasa turned to the mother and son still standing in the kitchen. I'm sorry you had to witness that. In cases like this, it's best to get answers quickly. We need to find Izuku. Give me a quick sec, my throat's dry. How did I not know? Inko is my oldest friend. We've met our husbands on a blind double date in college. People like her are master manipulators and actors. If she didn't want you to know her true nature, you would never know. Mitsuki nodded and hugged her son tighter. May I ask your son a few questions? The mother hesitated, but her son wiggled in her arms and turned to look at the detective. Hey, you were very brave to confront her. Can I ask you how you found the closet? I saw blood on the door. The boy shivered and leaned closer to his mom. I'm sorry you had to see that, kid. There's cleaning supplies in the tub and stuff missing from Zuku's room. Does that mean anything? It could. Cleaning supplies could mean she was trying to hide the evidence, but was interrupted. We weren't meant to come over today, Mitsuki revealed. Izuku had been missing from school for a week. Inko said he was upset about his quirklessness diagnosis. Katsuki got so worried he had a panic attack in class today, so I drove him over to see Izuku. I got worried when she didn't answer my calls. You rushed her. She probably wasn't planning on calling the police until after she cleaned up. But when you called repeatedly, she had to speed up her plan, or you would be suspicious. What is the the kid stumbled over the words. That's the Yakuza. Yeah. This is me stumbling over the words, not who's speaking at the moment. That's the Yakuza, isn't it? His mom supplied. Namasa nodded. I am so sorry I am butchering words. They're involved in quirk trafficking, but lately they've been offering a premium on quirkless people. Will Zuku be okay? We'll do our best to get him back. There's a whole team of police and heroes that have been investigating them. We've already started looking for your friend. Trust me. I literally can't tell a lie. He offered a friendly smile, and the kid returned it weakly. Izuku would have loved your quirk. The detective tilted his head curiously. He loves all quirks. He would be asking you a million questions. He would want to know what it felt like when someone lies, if you can detect half-truths, if it works on recordings. Sounds like a smart kid. Zuku is the smartest. We're going to be a hero duo. He'll be the brains, and I'll punch the bad guys. Like All Might and Sir Night-Eye. The kid's eyes darkened. Please bring him back. I'll do my best. And that is the end of chapter 1. There is a summary to chapter 2. And so I'm going to read that for you guys. And I'll talk a bit about chapter 1 after that. Chapter 2. Damaged Goods. Izuku's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week. There is trigger warning. There's going to be trigger warnings for chapter 2, but I'll read that when we actually get into chapter 2. So, I feel so bad for Izuku. Like, oh my goodness. I don't think I said how many chapters there are in this, but there's 45 chapters in total. Anywho, as I was saying, I feel so very bad for Izuku. Like, before his life even began, it was horrible. And I love the nickname Mitsuki has for Katsuki, Firecracker. Oh my gosh. If I ever have a kid that has a very bright and rambunctious and like something, I want to give my kid the nickname Firecracker. It's so cute, and I'm sorry about the loud noise just there. My mic hit my desk. And I only have like 8 weeks left of school here. So okay, once school ends, I am going to stop my college in nerdiness podcasts. Anywho, this episode was an hour long, apparently, which I'm so sorry. So yeah, if I realized that was an hour long, I would have like broken it up, but too late now. Until next time, my beautiful mythical creatures, stay hydrated and eat donuts. Peace out.